An ordinary pencil seems like one of the simplest products we use. Yet inside its wooden shell is a carbon-rich core that could become the starting point for something far more advanced. In this scientifically grounded vision of a future recycling factory, discarded pencils are dismantled, purified, and converted into a graphene-rich material for multi-layer body armor. For that transformation to work, every contaminant, particle, layer, and bond would have to be controlled. The dark center of a pencil is commonly called lead, but it contains no metallic lead. Its main ingredient is graphite, a crystalline form of carbon mixed with clay and small amounts of wax or binder. Changing the ratio produces cores that write harder, softer, lighter, or darker. Inside graphite, carbon atoms form extremely thin sheets, stacked like microscopic pages. Those layers slide easily, allowing graphite to leave a mark on paper. If separated into flakes only a few layers thick, the resulting graphene nanosheets offer high strength, low mass, and enormous surface area. That does not mean pencils can simply be melted into armor. Modern protective plates combine several engineered materials. A rigid strike face spreads concentrated force. Tough fibers stretch and absorb energy, while backing layers help contain fragments. A controlled amount of graphene-rich material may reinforce the resin and improve stress transfer between layers, but it supports the complete system rather than replacing it. Its benefit would depend on even dispersion and strong bonding with the resin. It still could not compensate for poor molding or an unsuitable plate design. Pencil cores are also difficult feedstock. Along with graphite, they contain clay, wax, adhesives, paint, wood residue, and mixed hardness grades. Recovering consistent carbon from this irregular stream is the first serious engineering challenge. Collection would begin in schools, offices, workshops, and pencil plants, where damaged stock and used pencils could enter dedicated containers. Early sorting would keep out markers, mechanical pens, and colored pencils that need different recycling routes. Covered trucks would protect each load from rain and contamination. A weighbridge would record its mass before containers entered separate warehouse zones, keeping untested material away from approved batches. Technicians would sample each load for moisture, pencil type, contamination, and likely graphite content. Material containing too much plastic, paint, or colored core would remain in quarantine. Approved pencils would enter a metered hopper that releases a steady flow. A vibrating feeder would align pieces of different lengths. Rotary tools could remove erasers and metal ferrules before they reach delicate machinery. Magnets would capture steel, while eddy current separators would direct aluminum into its own stream. Rubber, metal, wood, and carbon would now be separate resources. Machine vision cameras would recognize unusual colors, shapes, and body materials. Timed air jets could eject plastic pencils or colored cores that escaped manual sorting without stopping the line. The accepted pencils would pass through blades that split the wooden casing without crushing the brittle center. Flexible rollers would peel the wood away and release the graphite cores. Extraction hoods would remove sawdust and lacquer particles. Screens would separate intact cores from smaller fragments while recovering both fractions. Air classifiers would lift away light wood fibers. An enclosed washer would remove adhesive, paint dust, and surface dirt, although clay remained inside the cores. Low temperature drying would prevent wet clumps from blocking mills or distorting measurements. Roll crushers would break the cores into granules and expose the graphite clay mixture. Sealed mills would reduce them to a consistent dark powder. Enclosed transfers, extraction, and filtered collectors would contain fine carbon, protect workers, and keep dust out of clean areas. By the end of mechanical preparation, the pencil no longer exists as an object. What remains is powder ready for separation. Precision classifiers would remove debris and return oversized particles for more milling. Controlled heating would break down residual waxes and binders without damaging the carbon. Filtered exhaust would capture released vapors. The treated powder would be mixed with water into a pumpable slurry. In flotation cells, differences in surface behavior help carbon-rich particles attach to bubbles and rise as dark froth, while much of the heavier clay-rich fraction remains behind. Rotating skimmers would collect the graphite-rich froth. Hydrocyclones could concentrate the slurry by particle size and density, and a filter press would remove water, leaving dark cakes that are easy to sample. Because pencil grades contain different proportions of graphite, clay, and binder, repeated milling, flotation, and washing may be needed. Laboratory furnaces would measure residual ash, revealing how much non-carbon mineral remained. Only batches reaching the required purity would continue toward exfoliation. Lower grade material could enter less demanding industrial products instead of being discarded, keeping unpredictable filler away from a safety-critical composite. Purified graphite would next enter controlled electrochemical treatment. Ions move between its stacked carbon layers and increase the space separating them. This weakens their attraction so the layers can be peeled apart with less force. Rinsing columns would remove salts that might interfere with the resin or accelerate aging. The expanded graphite would then be suspended in liquid and pass through high shear mixers, beginning its transition into thinner flakes. A high pressure homogenizer would force the suspension through narrow channels. Rapid changes in velocity create shear that separates stacked layers without melting the carbon. Several controlled passes would produce more few-layer graphene nanosheets while limiting excessive breakage. Centrifuges would separate heavy, incompletely exfoliated pieces from lighter nanosheets that remained suspended. The coarse fraction could return to the homogenizer in a closed loop. Membranes would concentrate the accepted material and recover carrier liquid. Repeated washing would remove residues that could make flakes clump or weaken their bond with the polymer. The material could remain as a concentrated liquid dispersion or enter an enclosed spray dryer to become a fine black powder. Nanomaterial production requires strict containment, sealed equipment, grounded transfers, ventilation, and inert gas where appropriate would limit contamination and airborne exposure while helping maintain consistent batches. Quality checks would follow every major transition. Raman spectroscopy can indicate layer structure or damage. Electron microscopy can reveal folded, fractured, or restacked flakes. Particle analyzers would measure size distribution because extreme sizes can create problems. Results would determine whether a batch was accepted, reprocessed, or diverted. Approved lots could be blended into master batches to reduce natural variation. The dirty pencil core has now become a controlled nanoscale additive. Only then can armor production begin. Computerized dispensers would weigh small, repeatable quantities of the graphene-rich material into a selected polymer resin. More is not automatically better. Too little may have no useful effect, while too much can thicken the mixture and encourage weak clusters. The concentration must be validated and reproduced precisely. High shear compounders would distribute the flakes throughout the resin. Good dispersion creates useful stress transfer points, while agglomerates behave like internal defects. Vacuum chambers would remove trapped air because a hidden bubble can become a crack after pressing or impact. Wide coating heads would spread modified resin across rolls of high-strength protective fiber. Precision rollers would regulate thickness, so every plate received consistent resin content. Too little leaves dry fibers and weak bonds. Too much adds weight and can restrict energy-absorbing fiber movement. The coated web would pass through a controlled oven that partially sets the resin, while keeping the material flexible. Automated cutters would divide it into accurately shaped plies with minimal waste. Robotic arms would rotate selected plies before stacking, changing fiber direction, so impact forces cannot follow one easy path through the panel. Layer after layer would build an energy-absorbing structure as placement systems checked alignment. A rigid front strike face would spread the initial shock, while flexible backing layers would catch fragments and manage energy continuing through the front. The graphene-modified resin would reinforce the matrix between fibers and layers, but protection would come from the full architecture working together. The assembled preform would settle into a matched metal mold where guides preserve its shape and keep each layer in the correct position. A hydraulic press would apply controlled heat and pressure. Flowing resin would fill spaces between fibers and bond the components into one dense panel. Insufficient conditions can leave voids and weak interfaces, while excessive pressure or heat may remove too much resin or damage fibers. Sensors would track temperature, pressure, displacement, and time. Cooling channels would lower the mold temperature while pressure remained applied, reducing warping and locking the internal structure in place. The cycle record could later be linked to the plate. Water jet cutters would trim the hardened panel into its required curved profile without overheating the composite edge. Robotic sanding would smooth the perimeter, and exposed edges would be sealed against moisture, abrasion, and accidental separation. The plate could then enter a reinforced textile carrier, but it would not yet be cleared for use. Laser scanners would compare curvature, thickness, and dimensions with the approved model. Scales would verify mass, since an unexplained change may indicate a missing layer, excessive resin, or contamination. Any unit outside the permitted range would be isolated. Ultrasonic systems would map the interior without cutting the plate open, exposing hidden voids, weak bonds, and delamination. Environmental chambers would condition samples in heat, cold, and humidity to test whether the bonded structure remained stable. Other samples would be flexed and dropped to reveal edge weakness before ballistic evaluation. In a sealed laboratory tunnel, standardized projectiles would strike plates mounted against instrumented backing material. High-speed cameras and sensors would record penetration, deformation, fragment behavior, and the way energy spread through the layers. Because ballistic tests destroy the samples, they would represent validated production groups rather than every saleable plate. A failure would trigger quarantine and analysis to determine whether the cause came from purity, dispersion, stacking, pressing, or edge finishing. The design and process would then require correction and another complete test cycle. Only independently verified products meeting the relevant requirements could be sold as certified bullet-resistant protection. This distinction matters. A promising material or successful prototype is not enough. Performance must remain consistent across production, environmental conditioning, and formal testing. Approved plates would receive permanent serial numbers linked to raw materials, processing settings, inspections, and test records. Protective sleeves would guard the surfaces, while fitted cartons would support the curved shape during transport. Robots could palletize the labeled packages and move them into a secure finished goods warehouse. Documented shipments would travel to accredited laboratories, authorized distributors, or approved institutional customers under controlled chain of custody procedures. Traceability connects each plate to the evidence behind it long after it leaves the line. For safety equipment, that record is part of the product. By the end of this imagined process, discarded pencils have traveled from a mixed stream of wood, paint, clay, and graphite to a precisely engineered component inside advanced protective armor. The transformation is not the result of magical carbon. It depends on careful recovery, controlled exfoliation, disciplined composite design, and uncompromising verification working as one system.